So Russia's tough week continues. It looks like they just lost 2 more Su-27s and another ship, or maybe 2, actually. Meanwhile, senior Russian officials, to include Vladimir Putin, are strangely doubling down on exaggerated claims about progress at the front, like saying that they have taken towns and villages where the reality on the ground just doesn't line up. We haven't seen it like that from the top levels in quite a while. We got a couple ideas what that's about. Now, starting out with yesterday's strike in Crimea, or the announcement yesterday of a strike in Crimea, you'll recall a couple days ago, the SBU released still footage showing that they hit a Russian MiG-31 Pantsir air defense system and then multiple air defense radars. We did not get a video of that. We got stills from the drone strikes. It looks like the same thing here. Now, whether this is part of the same operation or a follow-on operation isn't clear. But they said the SBU's Alpha Special Operations Center hit 2 Su-27 aircraft at the Russian military airfield in Belbek in the temporarily occupied Crimea. They say one of the aircraft was on the taxiway with a full load of ammunition and was ready for a combat sortie or mission. It was destroyed. The estimated value of both aircraft is about $70 million US. Additionally, the damage to the control tower has been confirmed, which could complicate the organization and control of flights at the airfield. I saw some folks last time when this footage came out say this doesn't make sense. How are drones not being detected and shot down? It's a challenge with these small munitions. A lot of these radars and air defense systems are not designed to shoot something down the size of a laptop. They're designed to intercept helicopters, long-range, large missiles, fixed-wing aircraft, or some large fixed-wing drones. Think like Predator, Reaper, or in this case, probably a Bayraktar drone if Ukraine was to fly one of those over. These smaller loitering munitions are just, for lack of a better term, they're flying under the radar. They're not being picked up, and or in some cases, they don't have the means to effectively destroy that small of a munition. So as soon as they're getting close to some of these assets, it's a real problem. Now, it wasn't just the airfield strike yesterday. Ukraine's Special Operations Forces released a bit of a teaser with a picture. Again, no video, and this is unique in the last couple days, where they said that on the night of December 19th, Ukrainian SOF struck a Russian patrol ship, Okhotnik. These are modern Russian patrol vessels and equipped with weapons and systems for performing a wide range of tasks in coastal waters. Several drones successfully hit the target. They say their drones also hit a drilling platform in the Caspian Sea. Oh yeah, this strike, Caspian Sea, not Black Sea. So pretty wide-ranging, and that wasn't even the furthest away from Ukraine in the last 48 hours. They say the facility they struck in the Caspian Sea belongs to the Russian company Lukoil. The platform supports oil and gas production, the export of which replenishes Russia's budget and finances the war. That one pretty notable, of course, military vessel being hit there. We also have a Russian Shadow Fleet tanker that was just hit in the Mediterranean. And real quick, before we get into the details and play the footage of this, just to give you an idea of the scope of these operations. So here on the map, we've got Ukraine right in the middle of the screen, the Black Sea here to the south. So this is where we've seen the majority of naval strikes. It's where the submarine was hit here off the coast of Crimea a couple days ago. A lot of Ukrainian operations in the Black Sea. Zooming out a little bit, come all the way over here to the Caspian. This is where the patrol boat was hit, and a couple of the what do they refer to them as? The drilling towers or the drilling platforms here in the Caspian. Ukraine does not have a border with the Caspian. So to get those drones, multiple drones, they said, to hit that patrol vessel, they had to find some way. I don't know if it's a mothership carrying them across, one of those models, across Russian territory, or smuggling something into one of these countries. We don't know quite yet. But they struck in the Caspian. The next one I'm going to tell you about was in the Mediterranean. This is just the course of the last couple days. Little Ukraine right here, striking Russian assets in the Black Sea, the Caspian Sea, and now the Mediterranean. So turning to that Mediterranean strike, we've got some footage of this one as well. According to Business Insider, they say Ukrainian forces used long-range drones to strike an oil tanker said to be part of Russia's Shadow Fleet in the Mediterranean Sea for the first time. The attack was carried out over 1,240 miles from Ukrainian territory and represents a dramatic expansion of Kyiv's push to target Russia's vast energy sector. The tanker's name was the Kendil, Qendil. The SBU said that it was not carrying any oil at the time of the attack, so there was not any risk to the environment. Of course, we're showing the footage of the strike here. It looks to be a bomber-type drone. dropping munitions on top of the tanker rather than a one-way strike drone flying into the side of it. That's notable because it looks like, generally speaking, these bombers return. One-way strike drone flies into the target, and that's the end of it. So you usually expect for bombers to have to be at a closer range than necessarily a strike munition. Russian mill blogger Alexander Kotz, talking to this, said enemy sources report the successful destruction of a Russian oil tanker in the Mediterranean. And real quick note, we don't know if it's been destroyed. It looked like it may have adjusted course and exited the area, but I've not seen evidence at this point that the vessel was destroyed. But, based off of some of that footage there, it clearly looks like it would have been significantly damaged. Kotz says the objective footage shows the UAV hitting the ship's hull. The ship remains afloat, but the attacker's message is clear. We'll get you everywhere. Secondly, the armed forces of Ukraine have carriers for these drones, ships and vessels departing from Ukrainian ports. No UAV is capable of covering such a distance to the target from mainland Ukraine, and the most reliable way, he says, to cut off Ukraine from the sea and deprive it from the ability to carry out any shipping, let it be a landlocked agricultural power. Look, I'm not sure Russia has the ability to landlock Ukraine right now. Just in the course of the last week, we have seen kind of the opposite, where Ukraine is taking the fight to the Russian Navy and preventing the Russian Navy from carrying out operations, not just the military, but patrol vessels in the Caspian and now shadow fleet vessels in the Mediterranean. Not sure Russia has it in them right now to effectively landlock Ukraine in the way they're saying that they are. Now, turning back over here to a quick fundraiser update, we've got one last one we're kicking off here before the end of the year. The good thing here is this is a 501c3 registered nonprofit, so you can get your tax-deductible donations in before the end of the year. Wrap those up for 2025. So we've teamed up. Ukraine Aid Operations is hosting the back end of this. Incredible organization. But I'm helping out we all are helping out Chaos Company, the 2nd Mechanized Battalion of the 3rd Assault Brigade. These guys are fighting in some of the heaviest areas in the east near the Kupyansk, Liman direction. One of their drone operators reached out a few weeks ago asking if we could help them pick up some thermal drones. So I'm going to play some of that footage here real quick from the unit that we are going, well, a couple different ones. One from 3AB showing some of their thermal drone operations, and another showing some of their strike operations being carried out by Chaos Company. So again, what we're trying to get these guys are thermal drones for reconnaissance, not strike drones, not interceptors, but Mavic-style drones. They're looking for 10 to 15. We said we'd do the best that we can before the end of the year here. And if we go back to the page here, Ukraine Aid Operations, just to highlight, yes, registered 501c3 nonprofit, so donations in the U.S. are tax deductible. It's important. And for $250 donors and above, we've got a pretty cool, unique patch here from Chaos Company. So again, 3rd Assault Brigade doing some pretty important work and some pretty heavy fighting there out east. And as expected, as we always get with Ukraine Aid Operations or any of these organizations, we'll get some updates from the unit as those drones are set to be delivered. I understand that Ukraine Aid Operations is already working on acquiring some of those so we can get these out and into the fight as quick as possible. Now, it wasn't just these drone strikes Ukraine carrying out in the last couple days, but strangely, we've seen this kind of shift of tone from Vladimir Putin starting to talk more and more about these gains on the battlefield that just don't match reality. He had this long end-of-year session yesterday where he was speaking to the country, and he said the city of Kupyansk has been under our control for several weeks. Our troops control the city. They face a very important task of eliminating the Ukrainian armed forces grouping on the left bank of the river and occupying Kupyansk. We're a grouping of 15 battalions, 3,500 personnel are surrounded. Now, real quick, this is one, we're going to pull up a map here. This is one where I don't want to get too far in the weeds on this because I feel like it loses the focus of what's really at play here. Kupyansk is this city up north. You'll see that it changed hands. The blue is Ukrainian control, changed hands about a week ago, or officially marked as changed control about a week ago. The important part here is this is an area that Russia has said for weeks now that they control, and for some reason, even after getting a bunch of Ukrainian footage showing the clearance of Kupyansk, Russia is doubling down. So the bigger picture here is why? We haven't really seen this from Russia, especially the highest levels. Like Gerasimov, the chief of the general staff, the defense minister is saying the same thing, all the way up to Putin. We haven't seen at that level them blatantly misrepresent the battlefield situation since like the opening days of the war. And you can almost write those early ones off to the fog of war. Like it wasn't exactly clear what was happening. We haven't seen this in a while. Now, ISW, the Institute for the Study of War, put together an interesting assessment here where they said Putin made even more exaggerated claims about Russian battlefield victories than his senior military officials have made in recent days. They shared this graphic saying Putin also claimed that Russian forces have seized 50% of Liman in Donetsk Oblast and Heliopol in Zaporizhia Oblast and more than half of Konstantinivka. ISW has not observed evidence to confirm any of these claimed seizures or extensive advances and has only observed evidence indicating a Russian presence either through infiltration missions or assaults of 7.3% in Heliopol and 2.9% in Liman. They said even Russian mill bloggers claimed advances do not support many of Putin's claims, with mill bloggers claiming that Russian forces have seized a maximum of about 7% of Liman and 11% of Konstantinivka. So what's happening here? Like this is, and we're seeing this on the Russian analyst channels. There's kind of been a split. We see the group that did go to the Russian Ministry of Defense a few weeks ago. They're kind of on message saying all of these areas are now under the firm control of the Russian armed forces. The group that did not get invited to that are not repeating those same claims. So very clearly there's some messaging, intentional messaging behind this. And the ones that did not attend the Ministry of Defense briefing, at least from what we can tell, are sticking with kind of pushing back, saying, why are you doing this? Why are you continuing to say that we have taken cities and towns when we haven't? And I got a couple ideas here why. The first is that Putin is still not getting reliable information from the front. That there's been speculation about that from the beginning. It's, of course, impossible to tell. I would not be surprised in the least if he is getting a rosier picture than normal. But this level of just being misinformed is kind of off the charts, right? Like Kupyansk is not the largest city in Ukraine, not by a long shot, but Putin is so drastically off in his assessment there and is doubling down when the rest of the world watching this is saying, what are you doing, man? I mean, it was just a couple days ago, their evidence to support that they still held Kupyansk was Russian forces sharing footage 20 kilometers away saying that it was actually that town. So it's possible, the first one here, possible that Putin is just getting really bad information, not reliable information from the front. If that's true, you can only fight for so long. You know, it's an issue with dictators throughout history that can only go on for so long. At some point, that does reach a breaking point, especially in a contentious fight. The second is that he's lying. He knows he's lying, but he's kind of banking on the fact that the United States, at least our negotiating team, will take his claims as more trustworthy or more honest than anything coming out of Ukrainian or even independent reporting. We have to view this in the lens of the ongoing negotiations. I believe right now, Kirill Dmitriev is in Moscow meeting with Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner. Any change on the battlefield, I mean, is beneficial or a net negative to the two sides here, right? So for Ukraine to be able to say, why would we give up territory when we are pushing Russia back in certain areas, is a net win for Ukraine. So Russia does not want that to be allowed. And from the other side, if the United States or our delegation there says, hey, Russia, why did you lie about taking territory that you didn't actually have? It might throw into question other claims that Russia has made about their ability to continue waging the war or their progress on multiple areas at the front. So there's a lot of incentive for Russia to be blunt, to lie about progress right now, because it is going to cost Russian lives as they have to inevitably here in the coming days, weeks, or months have to still try to take the territory that they said a while ago was theirs. And that's what the Russian mill bloggers get upset about. But bigger picture, it might actually play well with certain folks in the United States. Now, in terms of what's actually happening on the ground there in Kupyansk, we got a couple different assessments here from Ukrainian sources. I came across both of these through Plyfra, an analyst on X and Telegram. I'll have his channel linked in the description below. But he got his assessments. First one here from Bogdan Mirshenkov, a Ukrainian mill blogger, who said, well, it's not 90% of Kupyansk that the defense forces control, but approximately 75%. And I think that's important. This was kind of presented in recent days as Kupyansk was all Russian or it was all Ukrainian. Neither one of those are accurate. I mean, even today, there's still very much a significant fight ongoing to clear out the Russian occupiers there. He says the rest is either a gray zone or uncleared territories. There are plenty of enemies there. In the controlled zone, there are also gifts in the form of find the occupier in the most unexpected places. What surprised me was the minimal amount of friendly fire, at least compared to what could have been. And this means that coordination and contacts with neighboring units are well established. That also speaks to the planning that went into place here. This was not just a couple random Ukrainian units that were thrown into the front haphazardly and all of a sudden are at risk of engaging each other as they're trying to clear out these ruins and these city blocks. This was a clearly planned, deliberate operation organized by Ukraine over the course of weeks, probably even months. Call sign Alex, a senior lieutenant in the Ukrainian military, added to that, saying on the positive side, taking control of Kupyansk completely is just a matter of time, based on what's happening in the city now. This is a prospect for the next few weeks. Let's go back to the map here to show you kind of what they're talking about when they say it's just a matter of time. Is generally because they're cutting off the Russian lines into the city. So if Russia is unable to advance, they've got these couple of pockets. Again, take those with a grain of salt, generally very loose. There's a lot of scattered elements throughout the city center, according to both Russia and Ukraine. But it doesn't look like they're going to be able to reinforce from certainly the west, the east, the south, and now the north, that portion. So call sign Alex saying on the positive side, this is just a matter of time. He said, however, the situation in the city was and is much simpler than in Pokrovsk because the enemy didn't have time to properly entrench and organize a defense. There was a kind of chaos there, and that worked in our favor. However, now the urgent issue is the cleanup of the city, which will take a lot of time in principle. It's not even about fighting organized units and groups of enemy forces, but more about individual scumbags who have holed up in their hideouts and will stay there until the end. It's a common tactic that we've seen, and we have footage coming out of Pokrovsk, especially Pokrovsk right now, but some out of Kupyansk as well. I think what I'm showing on the screen here are recent operations down in Pokrovsk. We are seeing individual Russian soldiers that have moved forward and kind of taken up shelter in some portion of the city that have to be hunted down and eliminated. In some cases, Ukraine is doing that with assault groups, infantry on the ground, house by house, room by room. In other cases, there are large portions of the city overwatched with drones, and the minute someone makes their presence known, there are a number of Ukrainian strike drones called down to clear out that area, essentially from the sky. According to a couple different Ukrainian sources here, that is kind of what is ahead in Kupyansk. Now I want to shift back over to another area of the battlefield. We'll pull the map back up here. Minograd and Pokrovsk down in the south, where a lot has been happening here. Hands down, the heaviest fighting all along the front. One thing I want to draw your attention to real quick is here at Minograd, a little to the northeast of Pokrovsk. We've seen this be encircled for quite some time now. You'll notice a change on the map in just the last 24 hours. So you'll see Minograd goes from Ukrainian control, albeit according to Deep State Map, surrounded at least with contested territory. They changed that over to now all being in the gray zone. Russian mill blogger, military informant reporting on this says it's not quite what it looks like. He says reports have emerged of the complete liberation of Minograd, but our units are still clearing the city center. A premature debt-for-equity liberation would not affect Trump's position in the negotiations, but it would affect the credibility of information resources, including official ones. So again, you've got these mill bloggers saying, please, for the love of God, do not say that we have taken that city before we actually have. And we've got some footage out of Minograd in recent days. No doubt looks like a very nasty, significant fight happening there. It feels a little bit delayed to call that entire area contested. I think that's probably been the case for some time. When you look at just how close Russian forces are on three sides, they've been slinging drones into Minograd for quite a while now. This was just a formality in moving it over to contested area. I do want to note that we've also seen a pretty significant uptick in kinetic operations to the north of Pokrovsk in this area here. It looks like in multiple areas all across the front, there's been a relative uptick in Russian offensive operations. So in the Pokrovsk direction, we've seen a lot of footage from Ukrainian forces in recent days showing that they've stopped and repelled, these company to platoon sized Russian assaults moving into Pokrovsk, and then some up a little bit further north in Dobropelia. But just based off of the activity in multiple areas of the front right now, it does look a little bit like Russia is maybe trying to, win over some territories or have some kind of cherry on top for the year to say, look at everything we accomplished, maybe find their way to take one more city or a few more kilometers here or there before the end of 2025. So I would expect the next couple days here, next week plus, to be pretty kinetic. It's going to be pretty nasty all across the front by what it looks like right now. That's all we got for now. Again, for those interested and able in contributing to pick up some drones for 3rd Assault Brigade, that link is in the description and pinned comment below. That's all we got for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.